Ever wondered how Brian May got those orchestral guitar tones? Well, join me today as I attempt to build that elusive amplifier known as the Deacy Amp on Tagboard. Do you think I'm going to be able to capture the sound of Queen from those old records? Let's find out. This is one build that I've been putting off for the longest time, and I have no idea why. Maybe because Brian May was one of the first big guitarists that I got into, and maybe because this is going to be quite a difficult build, or I think it's going to be a difficult build. So what are we working with? We've got this absolutely massive tagboard. I mean, it's a ridiculous size. I couldn't use my regular tagboard, mainly because we're going to have two transformers on there, and they don't make them that long. So that's what we're working with there. There isn't that many caps for this one. So, however, there is some weird caps. We've got these 330 UF, 330 microfarad caps. I don't use them in pedals usually. And there is a massive amount of vintage germanium transistors in this. So what are we going to be using? We are, of course, going to be going for the CV7001's military spec variant. These ChatGPT tells me are the NKT 275 military version thereof. And so we're going to be using them because I've got them. And it's going to make this amp awesome. I will be trying to house this into an old radio just to keep the Deacy vibe going, but we shall see. First component up on a board is a 330 microfarad cap. I haven't gone fancy on many of these caps just because I think some of the resistor values are going to be tricky, so I might have to use a couple of resistors together, and I wanted to leave space for that. And of course the transformers are massive, so I really didn't want to get in the way of them either. Right, this first cap is polar, so you'll have to orientate it with the positive and the negative legs in the correct terminals. And I like to do the spacing as ever with my flat nose pliers because, well, it just keeps things uniform, doesn't it, being a military man myself. The negative side is going to go to our top left tag, which is here, like so. What we're going to do is we're going to put all of our components in, solder where we can, i.e. if there's nothing else going into the tags, then we'll solder them, which is the case with this one. And then we'll attach our wires to the lower part of the, or even we'll attach our wires to the underside afterwards. Sometimes I like to make a hook and loop and wrap it around these posts, or sometimes I'll solder the wires directly into the bottom. Today I think we're going to go with the bottom. I don't know which of my old vintage radios I'm going to be housing this in. It does require a 3 ohm speaker. No, 4 ohm speaker it says there, but 3 ohms is going to be close enough for the old speakers. Now there we go. So our negative's in the top side, our positive is in the bottom side, and if we have a look at our drawing, we can see that there is nothing else going into these legs. So I'll be able to wet the tip, get a bit of a solder tip cleaner on there, and then solder these in place. If you're using this style tags, like their posts, you're going to want a really hot iron because it takes a bit to heat them up. Or sometimes I find that if you scuff them up with wet and dry beforehand, that helps the adhesion. But my soldering iron's super hot. The Hakko, you can't beat the Hakko, can you? Let's face it. And then next up on our drawing, we can see that there is a 2.2 microfarad cap. And I've actually got these old tantalum caps. Viewers will have seen these before. I love these. They're used in old military circuits. The newer ones switched over to regular old electrolytics. But they tend to hold up better than most other vintage caps. And if we look at our drawing, we can see that the positive side goes into the next tag along as our 330 microfarad, the second tag on the bottom row, but the negative side skips a tag and goes into the third tag in the top row, and so that's how it's going to sit. So I'll just do my spacing as ever with the flat nose pliers and snip the legs as I go, like so. That way, we laying them out like this, you can keep the component in the center of the tagboard. It doesn't matter, you could run it so then it's closer to either side, either edge, but I just like the look of it being in the centre, do you know what I mean? What can I say? Right, so the positive So on these tantalum caps, I have shown this before, but on these tantalum caps, the positive side is the side with the bulge on it, and the negative side is the side with the flat face. That's just how they work. Some of them are labelled up, some of them not so much, and these little ones you can barely read what's on them. So let me see. This is showing us that in our top row there is a link going to the next tag along, so we won't add any solder into that just yet. But on the bottom row, it's showing us that there's nothing there, so we can indeed solder in place. To make a link, I'm just going to use one of the offcuts. You could use some of the uncoated wire, or you could just use some of your normal wire. But I always save the offcuts for this reason, because it comes in super handy just to make links with and stuff like that. The one good thing about this layout is there's not too many components in each leg. They've spaced them out quite well. I'm assuming they spaced it out so much due to noise, but I'm not messing about with the circuit design today. I'm just going straight ahead and soldering in everything that they've put on there. The next resistor is a 15K coming from the 4th pin along on the top row and going to the 3rd tag along on the bottom row. There we have our 15K added in. I haven't soldered the top rows in yet, because if we look at our drawing, we can see that there's a link wire going from the top of this 15K down to the 4th tag along on the bottom row. And then we've got a 82K resistor going from the 4th tag along on the bottom row over to the 5th tag along on the top row. Once we've fitted all of that, we can indeed solder every connection. Right, how to get started. So, I don't have any more component legs really. In fact, that will reach. This is my longest one. It's not really going to make it, so scratch that. What I am going to use is this. It's coated copper wire used for transformer windings. I'm just going to use some of that. So if I clip it to length, then to get rid of the coating on the end so we can solder it, and I'm sure someone's going to tell me off here in the comments, but bring it on. I'm going to use a Stanley blade. Actually, to be fair, I think Brian May, being the impeccable physicist that he is, would absolutely not approve of me hacking wire to bits with a Stanley blade. So there you go. If you have any ideas on how to remove this coating, the insulation on this copper wire better than using a Stanley blade, please do put them in the comments. I'm sure there's already people furiously typing telling me off. And if you come up with something that I genuinely feel would be better for me, not so much easier, because remember, it's me, I'm building on Tagboard. It's not like I like to do things the easy way. If someone comes up with something genuinely better, then I'll give it a go. But then again, Scouser and blade, you know, we've got a thing in Liverpool about Stanley knives. Maybe it's a stereotype. There we are. So I'm just going to lie this across the top, take a measurement, so then the insulation that's left there is like smack bang in the middle, so it's not going to interfere with our solder joints. Well, this stuff's quite thick, so it's a bit difficult to get in that hole, but I'm sure we can squeeze it. And then this side, same again. Oh, I haven't done that very well. That was about as straight as a corner. Well done, Joe. Right, there we have our link wire in. If you're as much of a Queen fan as me and you love Brian May's guitar sound, please like and subscribe, because in the future I'm going to be building some Brian May Rangemasters. There's going to be 3 of them and they're coming out shortly. So subscribe and you'll get to see the video first. And as a bonus, it really does help the show. It lets YouTube know that I bring value to you, and they'll share my videos to more people. That'll help my channel grow, which means that I'll be able to create more stuff for you guys. Thank you. Now, 82K going from the 4th tag on the bottom row to the 5th tag on the top row. I absolutely don't have any 82Ks. Pretty sure in the comments people are going to be telling me off, saying that I should, you know, wait to build this until I've got the right parts. All of this jazz. Yada, yada, yada. But I'm not going to do that. Of course I'm not. I'm going to use this, an Iskra 100K trim pot, and I'm going to change it into a variable resistor. So if I put it where I want to sit it on the board, I can see that that leg there is the leg that I'm not going to use, so I'll clip that off. It takes away some confusion. Give the legs a clean with my Nipex snips. I actually had a question on the last video of how long my Nipex snips last for, because I'm cleaning component legs. They last for bloody ages. They're so good compared to anything else I've tried. They really do hold up. Of course I could use something else to clean these component legs off, and these would last longer, of course they would. But, you know, for 20 quid for a pair, I'm more than happy to invest in a pair every 6 months. It's not a massive cost considering how many pedals I make with them. And of course you can get these through Amazon affiliates link in the description. Look at that for a seamless little plug. There's no extra cost to yourselves, but I do get a kickback, which of course helps me buy things like Tagboard for these weird builds. Because let's face it, Hello Sailor Effects isn't getting into the Deacy Amp game. This is a one-off just for the video. Right, so what I'm going to do is, and as you've probably just seen there, is I make hooks out of both my extended component leg and my trim pot. Marry them together, and then, ooh, that wasn't very good. Great demonstration there, Joe. Marry them together and give them a squeeze so then they become one. There we are. Now I can just simply solder that component leg on, and I've extended the trim pot's leg. Like so. I'm going to go ahead and get the other trim pot leg extended and then get it mounted onto our tags. There's all of our components now in. So we've got the top end soldered in with our 2.2 microfarad cap, our 15k resistor, our link wire that we made from some transformer winding wire, and then we've got our last of all our variable resistor, which is going to be 82k. So how do we get to 82k? Well, of course we use our Fluke 101, the trusty Fluke. If we put it to ohms and then attach one end, I mean, look at this. I'm having to cobble together bloody wires because one of these snapped and I can't find me black lead for these. There you go. Anyway, you put the one end to one end of your trim pot. Couldn't get my words out then. Trim pot. And the other end to the other end of the trim pot. And now we can see that we have, oh, I thought I was going to go to 82k then. It's set to 45k, and all I'm going to do is just adjust that till it goes to 82. I did go through all the resistors I've got to see if I could maybe get a combination of resistors to make this, but I just didn't have anything that was easily put together without like 4 or 5 resistors. And to be honest, I wanted to crack on and get this done. I've been dying to make this amp for ages, and now I've finally allocated time for it. There you go. Let's turn that down ever so slightly. 82.1. 82.1. That's close enough for government work. There we go. Now we know that that's exactly right. The Deacy Amp isn't just some random old amplifier. It is the sound behind all of Brian May's tones. Originally cobbled together from an old supersonic radio by the bass player from Queen, John Deacon, hence the name, the Deacon amplifier. This thing gives Brian his haunting sounds. And let's be honest, it doesn't sound like a regular amplifier. It doesn't play like a regular amplifier. It certainly doesn't feel like that when you're playing. Stay around to the end and you'll get to hear how this thing sounds. If I manage to build it correctly, that is. And our next component is going to be a 1.2k that goes from this tag here up to this tag here. We can't solder the top end because there's more going in there. However, we can solder this end. Although I haven't got a 1.2k. Of course I haven't. So what have I got? I'm trying to wing it here. I've got a 390 ohm resistor. And then I've got these high precision resolute resistors. I've got an 887 ohm resistor. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I haven't done the maths in my head. I haven't used ChatGPT to tell me because I just didn't have it in me to try it. I thought, why not just put the resistors together and see what happens? So I'm either going to look really clever here and have a chief engineer's eye and have guessed this, or I'm going to look really stupid and this value will be miles off and I'll have to go back to the drawing board. Either way, We're going to use, as I say, the helicopter method to join them together, give them a twist, and before I bother soldering, I'll test the value. So we're going to use the fluke round onto ohms again. That didn't work. Well done, Joe. That fell off. And then what have we got? 1.27k. I'm going to go with that because it's as close as I'm going to get with what I've got. But also thinking about these old transistor radios that you know would have been used in the original Deacy Amp. I think the tolerances on the resistors wouldn't have been that good, and especially now over time. Although I'm not going to be careless and try and stray away from values too much, but I just think, in the spirit of moving things along, I'm just going to add it in. And this goes from this pin here to this pin here. I am simply going to stretch these out. Normally, as people know, I'll have them standing up, but because we're travelling at a large distance on this tagboard, I'm going to lie them flat because, you know, we've got our high precision resistor, which is rather expensive. I want to have that on show. And I'm going to put the high precision resistor towards the top because there's other things going in the top, and it's a smaller body, so I think it might stay out the way a little bit better than our 330 ohm resistor. No, 390 ohm, sorry, that I normally use for my power filter circuits. There. Let's give that a solder. I tell you what, every time I use this style tagboard, I always say it doesn't half look good. Like the tagboard just looks good compared to the stuff I normally use. Less congested or whatever, because there's a larger space. I'd be interested to know, does anyone use this tagboard? I know my buddy Lenson Guitars uses this style tagboard, but I'm pretty sure he adds the tags in himself to where he wants to go because he makes like these amazing tagboard circuits. Right. Next up on the cards is going to be a 100 microfarad cap, and that's going to go from the top of our 1.2k resistor down, straight down to this tag here. I'm going to be using this 100 UF or 100 microfarad cap. It's a JB cap. It's a new one. I get these from, where do I buy these from? switchelectronics.co.uk. They're really good caps. They're not all that expensive. I probably should use an axial cap here, but I've got this to hand, so it's going in. It is polar, and on negative side, so the shorter leg, or the leg with the band on, is going to go towards the bottom here. Now, I can't actually solder this in because there's other stuff going in right next to it. Let me see. Oh, no, I can solder. That's a lie. Look at our drawing. I can solder the bottom in, but I can't solder the top. So let's get it in the centre and use our flat nose pliers to bend the leg over. I'd really be interested to know if anyone's going to have a go at this amp. Especially if you're going to put it in like an old radio or something. I'd love to know what radio you're choosing. I think if I ever build another one, I'm going to try and get a radio and then salvage the transistors for the amp from the radio. I think that'd be pretty cool. Unfortunately, every radio that I've got, I've already salvaged the transistors from for the other builds. So kind of ruined that one, and I didn't want to like order a new radio or source one out and then wait longer to make this video because I've put it off for the longest time. Okay, so there's the 100 microfarad cap fitted. Next, we're going to move on to our first transistor. How exciting is this? Germanium transistors in an amplifier. Get in. If we get our drawing up, we can see that the emitter goes into this tag here, the base goes into this tag here, and the collector goes into this tag here, which won't be soldered because there's a myriad of other components going in there too. So what's the criteria for these transistors before we're going to say yes or no to using them? Well, I want the gain range, the HFE, to be above 50 because below 50 is going to give us, like, it's going to be weak and it's going to give us some issues with trying to bias it. Above 120, that's going to be too gainy. It might make it mushy and stuff. So I want to keep it below 120. And then with our leakage, I want it to be below 500, which it's going to be because these are military spec. But I also want it to be above 100, 0.1, but 100 microamps of leakage. And that's because the leakage kind of helps it bias a little bit. So I don't want it to be like unleaky. This should make it real easy to find transistors for, because, you know, for the fuzzers and range masters and stuff, we're trying to get under 100 for our leakage. But anyway, this is the first one. Let's give it a test. So it's telling us it's a PNP germanium transistor. Yep. Gives us our pinout, which is crucial. And it's the main reason I say that you should get one of these Deacy A55s, is because you can never miss a pinout again. HFE is 82. So that's right where we want it to be, smack bang in the middle. If you go right to the end, our leakage is 126, which is bang on exactly where we want it, above 100 and below 500. So this is going to be a perfect transistor for what we're doing. And I knew it would be, to be fair. So where are we going to put our legs? On our drawing, we can see that up on the top row, we've got our emitter right at the top of that 100 microfarad cap. And our peak Deacy A55 is telling us that the blue is our emitter. So this one here is going in there. And then our bass, which is the red leg on here, is going into this tag at the bottom. And then our collector is the one that's not going to get soldered, which is going over here. So if we move that out the way, I think the enclosure I'm going to use is going to give us a lot of space. So I'm not going to need to worry about how long these are. Not that I want them to be supremely long. But rather than cutting them down, what I'm going to do is just push them in the correct tags and then manipulate them to go right the way down the holes. So then this is sitting kind of like that. Make sure that none of the legs are touching. I mean, of course, you could just add some sheathing on these legs. That would be best practice. I'm not going to do that. Of course I'm not, because that would be like professional and easy. I'm going to solder in the bass and the emitter because I can. But I'm going to leave the collector unsoldered because there's some other components going in there. It's just about to move on to the next part. And then I took a little look at the board and noticed that I put the negative side of our 100 microfarad cap pointing towards me instead of pointing away from me. So I absolutely got that wrong, which means that we're going to have to unsolder it, which isn't good, because one end of it is going in with our transistor. You should really unsolder these components, i.e. get some desolder braid and get rid of the solder, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to heat it up and pull the legs out like so. It's messed up my my neat little spacing, which isn't great, but it's easy enough just to use our flat nose pliers and remake that spacing. Or the fact that these caps are readily available, I could just get a new one. So now the plan is to drop this in with the negative going to the top end, not the bottom. I'm going to put the negative sides in first because it's got to contend with a few other components. And all I'm going to do is just get a bit of a bit of solder tip cleaner to clean the end of my soldering iron, and then just slot it in and give it a solder there. Simple as that. And then this side should, if I use my flat nose pliers, this side should just slot straight in without me burning my fingers, which would be nice. I can't believe it did that. I was literally talking about how electrolytics have to be put the right way round, and while I was doing it, I was soldering it in backwards. So now that that's sorted, next up we've got all of the components going into the same leg as our collector on our first transistor. And what are they? Well, there's a 2.2 microfarad capacitor. I'm using again a tantalum capacitor. You can use an electrolytic or a non-polar if you like. It doesn't really matter as long as it's the right value. And that's going to go straight up and down. There's also a resistor going from our collector over to this tag here, and that is a 5.6k resistor. I don't have any 5.6k, of course not. I do have a 5.1k and a 390 ohm resistor. And now I know that that doesn't make 5.6k. Apologies to everyone who's going to tell me off on the internet, but this is the best that I can do with what I've got. I'm going to marry them together using the helicopter method. And I haven't measured these yet, by the way, so they may be out of spec and get us closer to where we want to go, but I don't actually know. Then we'll take our Fluke 101 as ever and attach the leads, and we'll see where we are. There you go, 5.49. So it's not perfect, but it is pretty damn close. I wonder if anyone's actually got in there and measured the values of Brian May's original and seen like what is the actual values of everything, whether they've drifted or not. That'd be super interesting. I've got a Hawk boost, if anyone's heard of them. The Flynn Amps up in Scotland managed to get hold of Rory Gallagher's original Hawk boost and measure all of the components and whatnot and recreate it. And it's pretty special, I've got to say. Right, so we do the same thing again. Just going to measure our legs so that then the components sitting in the middle. I mean, the way that these resistors are spread out, you can pretty much only sit it in the middle. There we go. And now our electrolytic cap is going to be facing the opposite way round to this one. So the negative on our 100 microfarads is pointing to the top. And for this one, our negative is going to be pointing to the bottom. And of course, as previously discussed, the negative is the flat edge and the positive is the bulge. So it's going to sit like this. If anyone's interested, this amp will be live on my website. Pretty much as this video goes live. There is only ever going to be one of them because it's not my regular thing and it takes some time to do. So grab it while you can. Now we can solder in this tag here and this tag here, but this top end of the 2.2 microfarad is going to have another component in. So we're going to leave that blank. So let's wet the tip. Well, hey. Bit of an interesting combination now. From here to here, we've got a 2.2k resistor. I haven't really got anything fancy in stock, believe it or not. So I'm just going with a regular 2.2k. Then from this tag at the bottom, the other end of the 2.2k, we have a 47k resistor. I absolutely love these bad boys. 47k resistor going straight up and down. And then we also have a link wire going from the bottom of our 47 and 2.2k up to the next tag along. We'll be able to solder all of this in apart from this link wire at the top because there will be more components going in there. Before we solder in our little triad of components here, I noticed looking at our drawing that there's this sneaky 2.2k resistor on the outside of the tags going from the top of the 47k over a couple of tags along. So I think we skip two tags and then we go in the next tag along. That's going to be an absolute nightmare to fit on this style tagboard. I didn't really consider this or take it into account. So what I'm going to do is, before we go ahead soldering all of this stuff, I'm just going to remove the link wire and the 47k, and I'm going to add this in running along the board, so sort of like on the deck, if you like. Actually, someone was commenting on my last video telling me about different types of solder and drying times, and some of them dry instantly when you move your iron away. And it sounds interesting, but to me, I found a solder I like, and I know it takes a couple of seconds for it to actually dry once you've used it, but I like how it feels to solder with. So I normally don't like changing things like solder. Don't know about you guys. Do you have a preference on brand or something? I'm waiting with bated breath for Marcus Reeves's upcoming solder video that he's promised recently. Right, there's our 2.2k resistor in place. Now let's put our other resistors and stuff back in. So our 47k and then our link wire. There, now we can solder them in place and we haven't got to get underneath and try and get to that 2.2k resistor or add it in. I think if I'd have missed that for any longer and ended up soldering all these in prior, I'd have had to just fit it under the board, which, you know, you can do. It makes no difference, but I just prefer to be able to see everything on the top, because later on when it no doubt doesn't work, it gives me a, something to go off. Now remember, we're not going to solder in this leg here because there's other components going in there. So we've got our resistors and our link wire in place now. The next step is going to be another transistor. But before we add that, let's add in everything else around it. So then when we put our transistor in, we're good to go. What is around it? So here we have a 100 microfarad capacitor that goes from here, misses a tag and goes in here. We also have a 680 ohm resistor that goes across the same terminals. We also have on the opposite side, we have a 12k resistor that goes from this terminal here to this terminal here. Of course, I didn't have a 12k resistor. Why would I? But I do have a 10k and a 2.2k. And as they say in the military, that's close enough for government work. God, I couldn't get my words out there. Close enough for government work. I'm going to clean the legs of my 10k because it's an old one. And of course, it's got oxidization build up on there. And I'm going to marry them together by doing, of course, everyone knows it, the helicopter method. There's got to be a t-shirt in there somewhere for the helicopter method. I haven't quite figured out what it would be. In fact, I've just bought a load of Hello Sailor t-shirts for the Brighton guitar show because I can't decide which one I'm going to wear. I'm probably going to go with the Gibson font Hello Sailor logo. I feel like that's appropriate. Right, now that's in place, we'll just snip off the excess and I'll leave a rather large tag at the top just so then it doesn't fall apart. And I'm just going to trim the legs on these so then you can, well, so then they don't reach right out the bottom. And I'll just drop them in the top there and that's how I'm going to lie them. And also, now our 100 microfarad capacitor, or 100 UF, this is going across some number of tags. Now I've got two options. I can lie it over the top, but then I fear I may get in the way of our resistor, or will I? No, I'm going to lie it this way over the top. I think our enclosure is going to have a rather large amount of headroom. This is a conundrum. The other option, rather than putting it over the top, is to lie it on the board flat, and then that way it's not going to get in the way of anything when we put our transistor in, because that's going to sit vertical too. I may well go that way actually. So I'll measure it from this side because there's nothing in the way type thing. And we can do a bend here and a bend. Oh, that's not very straight. And a bend here. So all I'm going to do is bend the legs and then hope for, oh wait there, let's make sure we're getting this the right orientation. Well done, Joe. So the negative side is going to go towards the left hand side. That's going to be the negative side and the positive going to the right hand side. So that way around. Okay. There we have it. If I just hold that on and wrap the legs round, that should hold it in place. And we'll give it a quick solder. I've just remembered we've got a 680 ohm resistor to go in this bit, which I haven't sourced out yet. Should have really sourced all of the components prior to starting this build. And I do highly recommend that you do that. The reason why I can get away with it is because I've got a ridiculous collection of components right here. So if I haven't got the right components, I'm sure I can make it up from various other things. That's why I have the luxury, if you like, of being able to start these projects without actually having all of the components to hand, which is not advised. Before someone tells me that I should have all the right components before the start. I always get someone who tells me that, and I agree with you, but I'm not going to do it. I know you shouldn't blow solder joints, but the bloody temptation to do it is just unreal, isn't it? Anyone who solders, you just, as soon as you finish, it just comes out your mouth like a little... It's bad. Right now you can see that I'm fouling this centre tag, which I don't want to do. So what I am going to do is just try and move it away. Maybe we'll reshape it. I haven't done this very well. Apologies there. And it's going to lie not very straight, not brilliant, but it's going to work. Here's our 680 ohm resistor. Although to be clear, it's a 650 ohm resistor that has got a higher tolerance, and it actually reads 677 ohms, which is definitely close enough for government work. It's within its own tolerance, but yeah, spot on. The joys of having a massive collection of parts, eh? Now the choices are to lie this over the top of that one, or just to run it over the top. I'm going to run it over the top, so at least then we've got some components on site there, so we can see them. And this is an old resistor, so it will help my vintage street cred. If that's even a thing. Probably not. Now, I don't want this to sit right the way down, because it's going to touch this tag here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to sit it above and bend it back slightly. And then if I just solder one leg while it's bent back, I'll be able to bend it up straight again. So I'll just solder this leg here, because I know there's nothing else going in here. Actually, I don't know there's nothing else going in here. I really do need to check the drawing. I don't have it up in front of me, which is not best practice. Right, so time to test our second transistor. Here we are. I don't know why, but I always try not to touch the body on them. I can't help myself. Just in case the heat from my fingers, whatever minute heat would be transferred, changes the reading. Anyway, let's have a look. It's a PNP germanium, yes we know, gives us our pinout 72, which is above 50 and below 120, so it's within our range. Also 70 is what I really like for the Rangemaster. Let's see what its leakage is. Leakage is 116, so that's perfect. It's above 100, so we know it's definitely going to bias. Well, we don't know it's definitely going to bias. I'm assuming it's going to bias. Yeah. Now let's get it installed. So we have our pinout on our Atlas DCA 55. Invaluable this is. It's telling us the red is the collector. And if we look at our drawing, the collector is the bottom row, one tag along, if you like, the tag that's in between the 100 microfarad cap. And the emitter is going to the tag next to it. And the base is going to the tag where our 12K went into. Red is the collector. Okay, so the red is going to go on the far side. Our emitter is blue, which is this one. So if we undo them, we've got our collector, we've got our emitter, and we've got our base going over there. And I'm envisaging, and I'm going to have to use the audio probe on this one to be fair. And I might have to also use some heat shrink on the legs here, because they're fouling each other, which is not ideal. Now if I bend them legs over, I know that looking at our drawing, we can see that there's nothing else going in the collector leg. And the base leg has already got the two components in that are going in there. So I can solder them two legs in them. But as it turns out, I need to add some sheathing to that anyway. I'm going to use this pink wire, because that's the sheathing, oh sorry, that's the wire I'm going to be using to wire up the circuit. So at least it will match. And all I'm going to do is just strip it, tidy up the ends so then they're straight and square. And then slide it over the end of this leg. I honestly don't think I'd be able to build this without the Peak Atlas DCA 55. There's just no way I'd be able to get the right gains and leakages, and also the right pinouts, because sometimes you can read a pinout online, you type it into Google, it'll give you an answer. It's just not always the case, especially when you're using aftermarket transistors. I mean, you can find the spec sheets for old transistors, but sometimes different manufacturers use different pinouts and stuff. It can be like the Wild West, if you like. So there we go. We've got our sheathing on the leg going right the way up to the transistor body, so I know it's not going to foul on anything. Then we can bend that round to meet this resistor here. And I'm just going to wrap it around this resistor leg for ease, because I foolishly soldered that tag. Hopefully watching these videos, you guys can get a sense of the mistakes that I'm making and not make the same ones. That would be best case scenario. What do you say? A wise man learns from his mistakes, and a wiser man learns from someone else's. And I make a lot of mistakes. Right, there we go. Here we go for something interesting. This is our first transformer. It's pretty beefy. It is an LT44. And as you'll see on the bottom, there are 3 legs on one side and 2 legs on the other. Now, how these transformers work is there is 2 coils of wire, if you imagine, wrapped around this plastic bobbin. 1 coil of wire starts at this leg, coils right the way round, and then finishes at this leg. On the other side, this coil of wire starts at this leg, wraps round half of the winding or a percentage of the winding. Then you get this leg, then it wraps round some more, and then you get that leg. And we can see on our drawing that there's 2 sides to this transformer. There's a primary and a secondary. The secondary is on the left hand side, which is our 2 legs, and the primary is on the right hand side, which is our 3 legs. Now our secondary goes into the next 2 tags along, so it misses some tags here. We've got some components and it goes into them too, right? But realistically, we want to mount this so then it's inside the tags. So I think what I'm going to have to do is clip off these little tabs at the side to try and get it onto the board. Otherwise, I'm going to have to orientate it differently. I don't want to, because my magnetic field can mess about with these things. And if it's showing it this way on the drawing, I really want to have it this way. But it might not fit, which it doesn't. Brilliant. So it actually won't fit in between the tags unless I put it. Let's push them out. Oh, it will. That's a lie. It will. I'll take it back. I never push the legs out. Right, so actually this leg here, this centre leg, if you look at our drawing, we can see that this actually comes down and goes through to 2 components that come out of our 2 tags here. So I need to have a think whether I'm going to drill a hole and push it under, or whether I'm just going to slot it through one of these holes, which I think I'm going to do. And then it will come out on the bottom here and I can manipulate it, or maybe run another wire that comes up and attaches to our components. That sounds good. So if we go from look at our drawing and go from our transistor, we've got our transistor. Then the next pin along, we've got where our 100 microfarad cap and our 680 ohm resistor come in. We have a 39 ohm resistor coming from there. And on the opposite side, we have a 2.2k resistor coming from there. And they both attach onto this centre tap, as we call it, a centre tap, centre of the winding, from our primary side. Then if we move 1 tag along further again, we can see that our secondary wires go into these 2 posts here. That's what I'm going to focus on now. I'm going to go ahead and solder the secondary wires to these 2 posts here. And then our primary wires, we miss a tag. No, we don't miss a tag. The next tag along, our primary wires go into. And just to check that, if we get our drawing up, you can see our 2 primary wires, and then there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spare tags at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is how it's going to work. Our secondary side are going to go into these 2 tags, and our primary side is going to go into them 2 tags. I'm going to go ahead and solder the transistor in now. But before I do that, what I am actually going to do is put maybe some sticky foam underneath here just to hold it down in place. There's our transformer now soldered in. We've got the secondary wires going over here to these 2 tags, and our primary wires going over to here to these 2 tags. Underneath the board, we've got our, oh look, I haven't clipped off them transistor legs there. Look at that, how sloppy is that? Come on, Joe. Yeah, so our primary side, the centre tap, I've run through a hole in the board and it's come to here. Now's the time to join that to 2 resistors coming from this position here and this position here. And they are, of course, coming from this upper tag is going to be a 2.2k resistor, and coming from this bottom tag is going to be a 3.9k resistor. From the 3.9k, we also have, just to complicate things, we also have a link going over and attaching in to the other side of this 12k. Right, so there's our link wire. I'm just going to solder this end in because there's nothing else going into this end. And that'll sort of like fix it in place. There we go. Now, our two resistors, we've got a 2.2k resistor, same as the ones we've been using all the way through, which are just the cheapest ones I've got, unfortunately. I have got some old ones somewhere, but I just couldn't find them in time. So this resistor is going to go down, and I'm going to run them both down through this hole here. So if I position the resistor so that then the leg will go straight down and through the hole, like so. There we go. And then on the underside, I'm just going to bend that so it's pointing towards where we're going, which is attaching up to our centre tap from the primary side. And I don't think there's anything else going into this side. There's a link wire, but I'm gonna do all of the what looks like outboard link wires on the drawing. I'm gonna do all that underneath the circuit. I think I've recovered from my PTSD of the Timmy build that I did, where I messed up that one link wire and it added, like, I don't know, weeks onto the build. And as you can see here, here's a good example, right? I'm soldering this tag, but because I've heated it up too much, the solder's just wicking straight through, which isn't a bad thing, but I want to have a nice dome on the top. So I'll let it cool down a little bit and then just go at it again. Simple as that. Right, there's that. And then our next resistor is meant to be a 39 ohm resistor. Now, I just haven't got a 39 ohm resistor. I've got a 47 ohm resistor, and I'm hoping that'll be good enough for government work. I don't really know. We will find out. I feel like that's a reasonable amount for the resistor to go out of tolerance while it's in there. So I don't know. And all I'm going to do is I'll situate this into that tag and solder it in place this end. Oh, no, that's not very good situating, Joe. Missed it completely. Well done. So I'll situate it in there and I'll solder this in place. There it is, wicking through again and me not soldering correctly. Because I've reclaimed this resistor, you can't really tell on camera, but there's a real pungent smell to old components, especially when they've been sat in a circuit for years, like a musty smell. It's very odd, and it's filling the air right now, let me tell you. Right, so I'm going to just clip that so then it is just long enough to meet the end of our 2.2k resistor. And I know normally I say you want to get a good mechanical connection and all this jazz, but for this one connection, I'm just going to push them together and give it a solder. There. So now we have our two resistors ready to meet our centre tap. And unfortunately, look at that, it's so close to reaching, but it just can't get there because it's under the board. I could just lie one of these next to it and give it a solder on both ends, which is the lazy way of doing it, and it's definitely what I'm going to do. Fortunately enough, though, this is going to be underneath the board and no one is going to see this. There we have our first transformer wired in now. Now we're on to another transistor yet again. Firstly, the original ones of these had AC128s and AC125s. Now I have got AC128s and AC125s. I just thought these military spec NKT275, red dot, all that jazz. I thought these would just make cooler transistors and they test better. So I don't know, I went with these because I've been dying to do this project for ages and I love these transistors. So that's why I've gone with them before some purist tells me off. Now our next transistor, which was an AC128 on the original, it kind of sits off the edge here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the resistor that goes between these two tags first. It's a 3.3 ohm resistor, and I had to buy these in specially. I bought 2-watt ones just because, well, because bigger is usually better, and in my view it is. Plus it fills up a bit of space with this board. So I'm going to just space that out now before I start measuring the transistor and doing the pinouts. Which means as soon as the transistor's in, we can solder it. Now, there's actually two transistors going here. There's one going off here and one going down here. I missed that one at the top. So let's focus on the one at the bottom first, and then we'll move to the one at the top. So here we are. We've got our 3.3 ohm resistor in place. Now at the bottom we can see that our transistor is, we've got the base going over to this tag here, which is on our primary side of our transformer. We've got the collector going to the bottom of this 3.3 ohm resistor, and our emitter is going all the way over here to the top of this. So again, let's get our DCA55 out and give this transistor a testing. So far, the two in the past have been bang on the money what we want for this project, which is exactly why I chose these transistors. I haven't checked these ahead of time, so I don't actually know what this is going to be. What we've got, PNP germanium. We get our pin out, yep, 79, so it's above 50 and below 120, which is perfect. And then our leakage is 150, spot on. So it's above 100 and below 500, which is the criteria I laid out in the beginning. Now, pin out wise. So if we start with our collector, the red is the collector, that's sitting that side. The next tag along, or it misses a tag and then goes into our primary side of our transformer, is the base, which is the blue tag, so that's that one. And then it says that our emitter stretches right the way across. Now there's also some other components going in the other end of this 3.2 ohm resistor. It's another transistor. So if I just get that roughly to the same height as the other ones, I mean, it won't be exact, but it will be close enough for government work. I know Craze Fandango, if you're watching, mate, he hates me saying close enough for government work, but I just can't help myself. It slips out my mouth now. Now I can solder in. See, I can't solder in the collector because we've got some other stuff going in there, but I can solder in the base. So I'll solder in the base now, just so then that transistor is in place. And I'll also solder in the opposite side, or this end, of our 3.3 ohm resistor. There's our base in place, our 3.3 ohm resistor. Probably should have soldered this in before putting the really expensive transistor above it. Right, okay, so let's clear the bottom of any of these transistor legs. There. Now, the opposite side, if we get our drawing up, we can see that we have the base of a transistor going in here. We have the emitter and then the collector. So they actually go in consecutive tags. However, it's not going in the format collector base emitter or emitter base collector. It's actually going to reverse two legs, so we're going to have to cross two legs over. That's fine. We can do that. Let's take a random one of our pack of transistors and give it a test. So there we have a PNP germanium. It gives us our pin out as ever. HFE 81, again bang on for a Rangemaster, but also perfect for this. And then our leakage is 209, which would be on the high side for a Rangemaster, still usable, but on the high side, I probably wouldn't put it in a Rangemaster if this was the only transistor in there. But it's below 500 for this project, so it's spot on. Now, our pin out. So our collector is going to go on this side, which is, according to our DCA55, the green tab is our collector, which is also the red dot. That is why we have that red dot on the transistor. And I know there's this massive thing about red dot, NKT, whatever. I love that. But it just tells you which one is the collector. And then the next tag along is going to be our emitter. And if we look at here, the blue is our emitter. So these two legs need to change over. So these two legs here need to change over, which means that for me, I'm going to put some sheathing on the emitter. And again, because I've got this silicone wire, I can just strip a bit off, nice and easy, and slot it over. This is definitely one of the videos I've been dying to film for the longest time, just because I'm a massive Brian May fan, and I know we got a lot of his tones from this amp. Is there anything that you guys have been waiting for me to do? Any sort of, you know, pedal or design that isn't readily out there, that hopefully tied to an artist. They're the videos that tend to do best, is if it's tied to an artist. If you can come up with something, I will absolutely film whatever interests you guys, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Now, collector goes in here, emitter goes in the top of our 3.2 ohm resistor, and then the base goes into our primary of the transformer. If I can get it in there. There. And then we just sit that right down. Now what we can see is that I have actually done the sheathing just a little bit too long for it to sit down properly. So I'm just gonna give that a snip. I know it's only an aesthetic thing, but to me the look really matters. I know that offends some people, but whatever. There we go. It's 4 ridiculously expensive transistors right next to each other. Let me see. What can I solder in this side now? Get that out of the way. I can solder in the base and I can solder in the emitter, but I can't solder in the collector because there's more going in there. Okay, so the base and the emitter can get soldered. There we are. 4 transistors so far and counting. Next up, from our 2 transistor legs, we have a 120 ohm resistor coming from here and a 220 NF cap coming from here, and they join together in the center. Then we'll be able to solder in these 2 legs. So what have I got? I've got this 220 UF box cap. There's nothing sexy or amazing about this, but you know, we're squeezing it in between another transformer, so I needed the space. Now I haven't got a 120 ohm resistor. What I do have is this massive 150 ohm wire wound Wellwin resistor with the dirtiest legs you've ever seen, so I'll give that a little clean. This is like ridiculous level of size for this. And then I also have this 768 ohm high precision resistor. Now, to do this, what I'm going to do is just tie them together, and then that should, oh, I've just snipped that short, brilliant, well done Joe. That should create close to 120. I'm not going to do the maths because maths is boring. Again, because I've got such a large collection of components, it affords me the opportunity to make these sort of values just off the cuff. If you haven't got that, then I highly advise buying all the components in that you're going to use and testing them all prior to starting the project. Why is that not soldered in there? I'll tell you why, because the leg's dirty. Look at that. So I can't get a good solder joint because this leg at the top here is still covered in a load of filth, which is, you know, it's just never going to solder if that's the case. Even now. Finally. So then we've got our resistor. Well, actually, let's test it first because I don't actually know if we've got our resistor. The trusty fluke hole. And that's telling us that we've got 124 ohms. Close enough for government work, we'll take that. Now the question is, how on earth do I manage to join these 2 together and lie it across here with this massive resistor? I think I might have to have the resistor pointing up in the sky. Maybe wrap round the leg perhaps. Right, now we've got that ready. All I'm going to do is just bend this leg on our massive resistor over, so it like sits over the top of the tag where this is going to go in, and then we'll just flatten these legs out, and I'll just run this straight from that there. So if we make a hook and loop over the top, we can kind of dangle this capacitor. Nearly, I kept going to say resistor there. We can dangle this capacitor down and into the tag that we want to get it into, which is here. So if I solder that on the top, and then we can solder our transistor leg, link wire and capacitor all into this tag at the bottom here. There. And then if we just snip off the excess and give it a straighten up, there it is. Now we are on to our LT700 transformer. We have a primary and a secondary again, only this time our primary with the 3 legs is going to be pointing to the left hand side, and our secondary is going to be pointing to the right hand side. And again, it's just going to attach into two sets of tags, although this time our tags are going to have like a spacing in the middle. So we're going to attach into this tag here, there's going to be a space, and it's going to attach into this tag here, and that'll leave one tag at the end for our 330 ohm resistor. The last thing is our primary side, which has the center tap. Our center tap is going to be going all the way over to the top right hand tag, but I'm going to do that underneath the board. So I'm going to fix this to the board like this, and I'll run them ones over there. But first of all, I'm going to have to get some sticky foam on the bottom, just so then it doesn't go anywhere, and then we'll get on to soldering it. So there's our last transformer fitted. I've soldered in these 2 legs here, this side and this side. We do have the other side of our primary coming underneath. That's going to attach up here. So let's point it to where it's going to go. That's going to attach in there, but we'll sort that out in a second. Next, I want to turn my attention over here. So with our other transformer, the second set of legs went straight into the next tag. With this one, it doesn't. We skip a tag, and then it goes in right here, which is the second to last tag. And they are just not, I mean, that one's long enough. I could probably make that, but this one is just not long enough to actually make it to it and make a good connection. So to get round that, what I'm going to do is just take one of my old legs, give it a little clean, and then I'll fashion a U out of it and wrap that round the post and solder it on. And then we can just join that to the leg of the transformer. I'm probably going to do that for the other sides as well, just to be safe. Better to get a good connection on this, because that's what's going to carry the signal out to match the impedance for our speaker. Well, actually, I haven't really looked at this circuit, but I'm assuming that's what it does, because that's what it does in most amplifiers. So now I'm just going to angle this this wire that I've added in, so then it meets the transformer leg, and then solder them together. Careful not to put too much heat into this now. A, because transformers don't like it, of course, but B, because I don't really want to disturb the solder on this tag now. Right, let's see what we got. I think this might be the largest tagboard I've done. That's outside of a tube amp or a valve amp for my UK counterparts. There we are. Now next, if we look at our drawing, we can see that the center tap for the primary side of this transformer goes into the top right hand corner and it meets up with our 330 UF capacitor. I'm going to do this under the board. If I can find a component leg long enough, hopefully I can. Probably not, actually. Okay, so probably not. I'm going to have to use some of this copper wire, which is unfortunate. The last component on our list is going to be the 330, I bent that, the 330 UF or microfarad cap that goes between here and here, just like we started with. Here's our 330 microfarad capacitor. I could have used an axial, but I don't have any, and you know, vertical seems to do the job. We're going to mount it in the same as this one. Our negative goes to this side and our positive goes to this side. I'm going to use the same methods for spacing, which is using my flat nose snips. Just double check again, negative at the top and then positive at the bottom. We can space it out using, well, just in situ, and use our snips to bend over the legs. Haven't spaced that one very well. Huh. Well done, Joe. Fit that there, and everything that attaches to this cap is going to be attaching under the board on our wiring links, so we can solder them in. And this, I believe, is the last component. And I said compartment then, as if I'm back on a ship. This is the last component that is going on the upper side of the board. Next is just some link wires underneath, and we are good to go. There we are. That really is a handsome looking board. I mean, 4 high price germanium transistors. We've got two transformers. They're quite beefy as well, with regards to like pedal sort of voltages. And that is a pretty long tagboard, if I do say so myself. And just for comparison, so you can see the size of this tagboard. So I don't know if the scale is coming through there. There's a tube screamer. So this thing is like longer than a tube screamer. It's bad. You couldn't even fit it in there lengthwise. Now's the fun bit. We're going to add in all of the underboard wiring, the bit that I've been dreading since that fateful Timmy build. I mean, I don't want to ruin the work on this circuit because it's looking pretty good, in my opinion. So if we look at our drawing, we can see that on the top row, we've got our negative 9 volts, which is actually, if we're thinking about it, just negative. I'm going to start from this top corner here. And I'm just going to go along, and as we can see, there's quite a bit of pink wire linking everything together. And so we've got, in the first tag is a pink wire. Then we miss 3 tags, 1, 2, 3, and then it goes in here, which is next to our 82k resistor. Is it 82k resistor? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 into the bottom of the 82k resistor. Then it misses 1 and goes in. Then it misses 1 and goes in again. Then we've got some, basically I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to go down the line and add in each loop. What I'm going to do is, to do it, I'll do the first one on camera and then we'll whiz through it off screen, just so then this video isn't 8 miles long. I know how much people love a long video. Actually, I had someone tell me on one of my last videos that I should be aiming to only put out 10-minute videos, and I was on screen for way too long. I don't know how I would squeeze all of this in 10 minutes because I'm struggling to get it under the hour mark at the minute. Anyway, my short form content is 3 minutes long sometimes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder in to the first tag. I'm just using the same wire that I'm going to wire up the pedal with, just because this silicone wire is like really easy to work with. Right, so there's that in there, and now I know that I'm going to miss three tags and then go in. So if I make a loop and go 1, 2, 3, I'm going to miss them 3 tags and go in here. And I can double check it is the bottom of our 82k resistor. I'm going to go in here. I want to leave some length because obviously it's going to go inside the tag. Let's have a solder of that, give it a tin. There, so we've got that one, 1, 2, 3, and in the bottom of this resistor, I'm going to double, triple check everything because I've definitely got PTSD from that last mistake I made. Now the next one comes out of here, misses one, and goes in, and it should go into the 5.6k resistor, which it does. So all I'm going to do is, again, take a length of wire, strip both ends. This doesn't have to be the neatest in the world. I mean, I know really it's on video, so I want to make it neat just because people are going to see it. But I mean, once it's in the amplifier, no one's going to see any of this. As long as it's all in there and connected to the right places, I'll be happy with that. So we're going to put one leg in the same leg that we've just been in before, and then we're going to skip a tag and go in. Now all I'll do is I'll solder this leg here, but I won't solder the next one along because obviously we're going to carry on the chain. That was a terrible solder joint, but there you go. There. And so on and so forth. And I'm just going to go down the whole line there and put in all of these pink wires, which is our negative 9 volts. So that's all of them pink wires added in. We've got this goes to our 9 volt or our negative 9 volt as the case is. And we have it all wired up. Now, if we're looking at this underside here, we can also see that coming out of this tag here is going to go to our speaker negative. We'll add that in a sec. But what I did notice is I made a massive mistake. So over here, which is the base of our second transistor along this tag here, we can see we've got this blue wire that's floating off. And that goes all the way along to here, to this tag here, which is in between our transformer legs, if you like. This tag here. But when I was looking at it, I was like, that can't be right, because there's nothing going to that tag. So there's no way we're running a wire just to sit on its own. So then when I re-examined the drawing, I noticed that there's a 560k resistor missing from here. Fantastic, well done, Joe, and it's a good job I spotted it. So first, before I fit that wire, what I am going to do is fit this, which is a 560 carbon comp, or carbon film, sorry, not carbon comp. There's me fibbing. So we'll cut one leg long and one leg slightly shorter, and what I'll do is if I situate that long leg in down the hole that's open, and because I've soldered the other one I can't push the leg in, I can line it all up, hold it with my flat nose pliers, clean the end of my solder tip of course, heat up this joint and then just slide the resistor in there, and there is one end of our 560k resistor in. And now all I have to do is solder the other end, which of course is going to go from some underboard wiring over to here. See, check, check, check and check again. I would have never spotted that if I hadn't been doing this wiring. And of course, if you think something's wrong when you're doing your build, i.e. you're like, that doesn't look right, it's going to nothing. There's a wire literally attached to nothing, or maybe there's a cap attached to nothing. Always, always, always. Ow, I just bit myself on that then. What a dick. Anyway, always check it out and see what's going on, because you never know, it might just save you some time later on. So there's our negative 9 volts and our negative speaker wire fitted. All of the underboard wiring for the top row is in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and move to the bottom row, which is of course our positive ground. And as you can see on our drawing, it all links up from one end right the way along to the other end. And then we've also got a little link wire to put in that we didn't put in the beginning, this orange link wire, and also our input as well, because of course we've got to have an input to this circuit. Where our 100 microfarad cap leaps over, and we've got our 680 ohm resistor, well, the tag that they leap over that has the collector from our second transistor in, that's also got a jumper in that goes across one into the leg of our transformer, because of course if we look at that drawing we can see obviously that our secondary of LT44 transformer doesn't connect to anything without this. So that would have been embarrassing too. What are we going to put this thing in? I think we all know the answer to that. I am, of course, choosing a vintage radio. And I've got this. It's a Roberts R200 radio that I've stripped for parts. I did originally put this together because I was going to make one of my Ruby amplifiers in it. So it's got a switch already, which I'm going to use as an on-off switch. It does have 2 control holes, and that's because the amplifier had them. I think I may cover them up. If I feel like it needs some sort of volume control, we'll try and implement it. But yeah, what do we think of this bad boy? I have, of course, already fitted, because there was existing holes in this thing, fitted 2 jacks. This one is going to be an external speaker jack, which will disconnect the internal speaker. So if you want to drive something else with it, brilliant. And this one's going to be a guitar input. We have 9-volt power supply, battery powered because it's going to be a positive ground circuit because of the germanium transistors. Fine. You'll notice here, I don't know if you can see that properly from here, but the switch is actually a military aircraft switch. I'm not sure what it's from. British made, British military aircraft. Why can't I say that? Aircraft switch. We've got a roller speaker here. Now this speaker has got a small tear in the speaker cone, which isn't ideal, but I'm using this thing as a small practice amp, or we've got our speaker output if we want to use it for something a bit more professional. And we'll be testing it through the Captor X today as well. So how's this thing going to fit in? Because this thing, this circuit is just ridiculous. It's massive. I mean, it's probably the biggest circuit I've used ever in these videos at least. And we can see that it was made for this. It fills pretty much the whole amplifier on this bottom row here. Perfect. And we've got just enough space to run our wires in and behind. Now, the only one thing I can think of that we might need is if I do a volume control. That'll have to go on the input because it can't go on the output because that's going to the speaker. Don't really want to mess with the impedance or resistance, whatever, on the output. So it'll be on the input. And I've just noticed that we haven't added in our input wire actually. So I will have to add that in. But our input wire may end up coming from a 100k pot over here. This is where we are so far. So I've covered up the 2 holes that were spared in the top. I am going to add a volume pot on the input. I figured, why not? It covers up one hole. And with the other hole, I've got this metal badge. Good old British flag. Get the Union Jack in there for British rock. Why not? That covers up the other hole. We now have our tagboard mounted inside the amp, which is good. And it's just massive. I love it. And then on this side, we've got our positive ground wire going between the 2 jacks. We've got our live from our battery coming over here and attaching on. And then I'm going to run another wire from here. One of these wires, funnily enough. The live will go, the positive ground will go straight to there. This, I will extend this one and run it round to meet this switch. And then from this switch, we'll go down and meet the negative live, if you like. And that way, when I switch this switch, it'll just connect and disconnect this battery, giving us an on and off switch. Got our power coming in here. The positive ground is connecting to our ground buzz bar, if you like. The negative live is going through to our circuit. It's going through to our circuit via this switch. So this black wire, the negative live, is going right the way around here. I've had to extend it with one of these pink wires. It's going to our switch and it's coming from our switch round to the circuit. Done. So this will either be on or off via the switch. It'll just disconnect this wire. So now for the issue that I'm facing. For our external speaker to work, it's not going to be able to be tied to ground the same way that I'm wiring it in here with this ground wire. So that's got to go. What I'm going to have to do is just snip that off because it's not going to work. Our output, if we look at our drawing, we can see that our output for the speaker comes from the transformer. So it doesn't have a ground. The closest ground to it is the center tap of the primary side, the opposite side. So that's a no-go. The negative, the side that's got the big minus on it, is going to go to where the earth is on this jack. And the positive is going to go to the tip. Now here's the kicker. our speaker, positive and negative, are going to be run around, and they're going to attach on the opposite side of this jack here. So when the audio jack is removed, these two connections are closed, so they touch each other on all three of them. So them two will be connected, them two will be connected, and them two will be connected. But when we plug our jack in, it lifts up these little mounts, if you like, and lifts this side. Well, it lifts this side, but it takes this side out of the equation. So when we plug our speaker in, it's going to take this side out of the equation, which is going to defeat our speaker right here, and we'll be able to use our external speaker. But wiring it up like it was an AF was just a massive mistake, because it's not an AF and it just would never have worked. What we're doing is basically giving our circuit the chance to either see this speaker or an external speaker. That's the plan. This is a fun bit. So our speaker here has, you probably can't see it, but it's got a little 3 ohm sign down there, which is a 3 ohm speaker. Our drawing says 4 ohm. 1 ohm between friends on a speaker load is literally nothing. This side has got a little positive sign on it, so I'm assuming that the right hand side is positive. But how can we check? Best way to check is like this. So we take a battery. You could just touch the battery on it, or you can run a lead. We get our positive lead and our negative lead, and we touch the terminals with it. Now, if we've got this the right way round, the positive on a positive and the negative on a negative, the cone will move forward. If we've got it the wrong way round, the cone will move backwards. So let's have a look, shall we? I'm going to have to put my big fat head in a way, I'm afraid, to get in here and test this. Oh, jumped on my skin then. Don't know why, there's no voltage in there. Force of habit. You probably can't see that, but I can tell you that the right hand side is definitely positive, because as I'm attaching the positive terminal, the cone is moving forward. That works on any speaker, by the way, so any size, not just these little things. There's our 2 speaker wires coming from the bottom of the speaker, following this wiring loom right the way round and going into this side of our jack. Next is the input. Our input is going to come from this terminal here on our input jack, follow this wiring loom round, and it's going to go all the way round to what I would call pin 3 on our volume pot. So it's going to be this one right here. So I'm just going to follow that wiring loom right the way round and go to there. There's pin 3 of our volume pot wired into the input jack. And then, of course, coming out of the volume pot is going to go to the input of our circuit, which is our input wire as shown on our diagram. So I'm just going to run that up there, around the outside of the enclosure, around the outside of the cab, and come straight up and attach to the middle pin. So pin 2 of our volume pot. The last thing to add in is going to be the earth for our volume pot. Now you could leave no earth there, and all the volume pot will do then is pretty much become a gain. So at minimum setting it will clean up the signal, and a maximum setting you'll get as if the pot weren't there in the first place. Because we're going to be wiring it up to ground, i.e. as a volume pot, it's going to load up the guitar signal, so it is going to have an effect it being there, which obviously wasn't in the original Deacy amp. So we are sort of altering it a little bit. As you can no doubt see from my watch, it's 3:30 in the morning. I'm pretty sure my wife's going to kill me, but I couldn't sleep because I knew that I was halfway through this project, so I thought I better just stay up and finish it off for my sanity. You watch now, I'll get this last wire and it'll make absolutely no sound, and I'll be like unable to sleep because of that. That's what normally happens. I am actually going to hold off adding the cable ties for this one until I've tested it, because usually I'll just be a little bit on the cocky side and just put them in, because, you know, usually there's something that I've built before, or especially with a Ruby amp or something, I've built hundreds of them at this point, that I pretty much know that it's going to work, or that I can figure it out. But with this thing, who knows? I'm going to go ahead and get a battery in there and see what's what. Except when I finally plugged it in, nothing. Tumbleweeds, pure silence. I've worked on countless warship electronic systems as a chief engineer Royal Navy. And I tell you what, this amp almost got the better of me. Was I able to fix it? What went wrong in the first place? Stick around, because it was a mistake that any builder could make. Okay, of course, I turned it on and nothing happened whatsoever. So there's no sound coming out of the amplifier. Brilliant. I've attached my audio probe to my... Basically, this audio probe is going to the front of my Fender Showman. So it's just going straight into the front of this big, high headroom, clean amplifier. We've attached one end of our audio probe, as I've shown in the videos before, to ground. And now we're just going to use this probe and start from the beginning of a circuit and go round and find out at which point are we not seeing what we expect to be seeing. So here's our input. Oh, also, another thing that I forgot to turn on is the TC electronic wiretap is going to be providing us with our signal. So there you go. We know that we're at least getting signal to the input. What about the input of the circuit? Yep, we're getting signal there. What about a bit further down to the transistors? Yep, and further down. I'm not... I mean, I'd say that's signal. So we know we're getting signal that far. So what about to this transformer, our first transformer? So now we've come to it, the massive mistake I made. Can you spot it? Have you spotted it already? I cannot believe I did this. Stay tuned for this segment and you'll see the tiny little mistake I made that ruined this whole project. So we're getting signal there, and what about the other side? So we're getting sorry, I'm knocking everything over here. We're getting signal to the other side. So what about coming out of that transformer? The transformer. Nothing. Nothing. So there's nothing coming out of this transformer here. And even further down the line. Oh, there you go. Here we go. So further down the line, which is the secondary of this transformer. Oh, there's something coming out there. So that's interesting. And that by proxy should be going right the way up to our speaker positive. Here. Which it's not. So it's just... this is the negative feedback, I think, coming from over here. So that's coming from that blue link wire. Actually, it's not the secondary side of the transformer. That was a bit of a misnomer. So that's coming from over here somewhere. It's that signal right there coming up here. But there's nothing coming out the other end of this. Basically, from this transformer onwards, there's nothing. So, back to the drawing board. I'm going to investigate the output side of the LT44 and just see if I've missed anything off. Now, with our audio probe, we narrowed it down to being something to do with our first transformer, the LT44, because that's where the signal disappeared. Now, looking at our drawing, we can see that our secondary, the one that attaches to the tag in the top row, appears to be going to absolutely nothing. However, if we then look at this schematic that I found online, we can see that T1 is our LT44. On the output side of it, the primary side of it, it's got 3 connections and 2 of them go to OC81s in this circuit. In the original, they were AC128s and AC125s. Whatever, doesn't matter. On the secondary side of it, we've got a transistor going to one side of the transformer and the other side of it ties directly in to the negative 9 volts. But on our drawing, it really doesn't look like that attaches to the negative 9 volts. So that absolutely confused me. But you can see now looking at it that secondary must attach to something. It needs a power source to drive the transformer. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link wire in between our secondary that goes into the upper row of tags and the next tag along that goes into the 2.2k resistor, which is obviously attached directly to our 9 volt negative power supply. There's our link wire in. I've connected my wire tap, TC Electronics wire tap to it. We've got our power switch on. Let's press play on the wire tap and then slowly increase the volume and see what happens. Ooh, there you go, now we're getting some volume. Very distorted. But then again, that might be the speaker. Because the speaker's got a rip in it, there's a very good chance that that is just the speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my guitar into it instead of the wire tap. And I'll also attach the Captor X into this here, and we'll see if we can drive the Captor X with our amplifier. Now that that's out the way, it is of course the sound sample, the part that you've all been waiting for. Just be safe in the knowledge that my playing is terrible and it makes this amp sound 100 times worse. But I would like to know what you think of this build, and if you're trying to build one yourself. If you want to support the show, please like and subscribe. It really does help the algorithm. I mean, 60% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed. It's mental. Thank you. Let's hear what it sounds like with my 1977 Hardtail Strat. So let's hear what it sounds like. Bridge pickup. Sounds stabby, but it does clean up. What about in the middle position? And the neck. I could see Brian May playing this with a ton of gain on the single coils and really slamming it with a range master and getting somewhere. Let's turn the volume down a bit more. What do we get? And this is maxed out. That was terrible. It's basically a blown out fuzzy amp, blown out fuzzy practice amp. I much prefer it with the volume dialed back a little bit. You don't lose all your high end then. So what else can I do? Well, if we go to the neck pickup, it can clean up really well. If you can't tell, I'm going to see Oasis soon. Ha! Can't wait. Anyway, middle position. You'll have to excuse my terrible Oasis licks. But what else can I do? And then roll back the volume. Don't know if you can tell there, but every time I pick, I bloody hit this middle pickup. So frustrating, but this is the only single coil guitar I've got until I finish building my Telecaster. So middle position. That was terrible. You'll have to excuse me with my leg up because I haven't got a strap to hand for this. But here we go in the bridge position, so bridge humbucker. much darker than before. Neck position. The bridge position cleaning up. It does clean up. Neck position. I mean, it's just got some real big snarl to it. I don't know if that's going to come across on video, but when you dig in, the notes really jump out compared to when you back off. I hope you like that sound sample, and I hope you like the mental tones. I'd love to know what you think of this project, and I'd also like to know if you have any other build ideas, anything else that you think I should be doing with this channel. Thank you.